The applause began before Maren Vale had even washed the blood from under her fingernails. It rolled through the hospital lobby in clean, polished waves, rising from donors in dark suits, board members with careful smiles, and reporters standing beneath the bright white banner that called her a hero. On the stage beside her, Everett Calder sat in a wheelchair with a wool blanket over his knees and a gold watch shining at his wrist. He looked fragile, grateful, expensive. Maren stood beside him in the same blue scrubs she had worn through the worst night of her life. Her son stood at the back of the lobby and did not clap. Jonah Vale was 16, pale from his own hospital bed, one arm stiff against his side, where an IV bruise still darkened the skin. He had refused the wheelchair offered to him. He had refused the nurse who tried to guide him closer. He had refused, most of all, to look at his mother like she was still his mother. When the hospital administrator leaned toward the microphone and said, "Nurse Vale made the impossible choice with extraordinary courage," Jonah laughed once. It was not loud, but Maren heard it. Every person in that lobby could praise her for saving the richest man in the county. Only one person had the power to make her feel as if she had abandoned someone who still needed her. Everett Calder's daughter, Laurel, stood close enough for the cameras to capture her hand resting gently on her father's shoulder. She was elegant in a cream suit, her hair pinned back, her face trained into sorrow and gratitude. A photographer asked Maren to step closer. Laurel smiled without warmth and whispered through her teeth, "Just hold his hand for the photo. It will help the hospital." Maren looked down. On Everett's wrist, the gold watch had stopped at 2:17. That was the minute Maren had been pulled away from the East Corridor. The minute she had turned toward room 4. The minute her son had been somewhere behind a locked fire door, calling her name until his voice gave out. The photographer raised his camera. Jonah turned and walked out. Maren stepped off the stage before anyone could stop her. The applause broke apart in confused pieces behind her. A reporter called her name. The administrator, Celia Voss, reached for her sleeve, but Maren moved past her. She followed Jonah into the corridor, where the sound of the ceremony became muffled behind glass doors. He was standing by the vending machines, breathing hard, one hand against the wall. "Jonah," she said. He did not turn around. "I didn't know," Maren said, and even to her own ears the words sounded too small for what they were meant to carry. Jonah's shoulders tightened. Then he said the sentence that would follow her through every hallway for the rest of the week. "You always know when someone else needs you." He walked away before she could answer. Behind her, the lobby doors opened again. Celia Voss stepped into the corridor, wearing the expression of a woman whose ceremony had been damaged, not whose nurse had been broken. "Maren," Celia said softly, "we need you back inside. The Calder family is still here." Maren looked at her administrator. Then at the corridor, Jonah had vanished down. For one cold second, she saw the whole night again in pieces. The blue wristband on the floor, the locked east door, the overhead page that had named Everett Calder but not her son, and the young nurse who had whispered, "I was told not to send you there." Maren turned slowly. "Told by whom?" she asked. Celia's face changed almost too quickly to notice, but Maren noticed, and for the first time since the applause began, she understood that the worst choice of her life might not have been entirely hers. Maren Vale had spent 19 years learning how to keep her hands steady while everything around her fell apart. She had held pressure on wounds, counted breaths, in rooms that smelled of antiseptic and fear, lifted elderly patients with the gentleness of a daughter, and spoken calm words to families who were moments away from hearing terrible news. Her hands knew how to work when her heart was shaking. At home, those same hands were less certain. She burned toast. She forgot permission slips. She fell asleep in a chair with laundry unfolded beside her. Some mornings, Jonah would find her still in scrubs at the kitchen table. One shoe off, her badge clipped to her collar, like she had never fully come home. After her husband Daniel died, work had become both punishment and shelter. Daniel had been a school custodian, the kind of man who fixed squeaky doors without being asked and left notes in Jonah's lunchbox. His death had not been sudden enough to feel merciful, or slow enough to feel prepared. It had been a season of bills, waiting rooms, insurance calls, and quiet dread. When it was over, Maren returned to the hospital because the mortgage did not care about grief. Jonah was 11 then, old enough to understand loss, young enough to wait at the window every evening, pretending he was only looking at the street. Maren told herself she was working for him. Jonah grew up hearing that sentence until it stopped sounding like love and started sounding like absence. On the night everything changed, Maren was working a double shift at St. Anselm Medical Center, a private regional hospital, with marble floors in the lobby and chipped paint in the staff stairwell. It was not named after any real saint anyone prayed to anymore. It survived on insurance contracts, community goodwill, and donors like Everett Calder. Everett Calder had made his money in construction decades earlier. He had donated the cardiac wing, the chapel garden, and half the machines in the imaging department. People spoke his name with gratitude in public and caution in private. He was not cruel, but wealth had built a quiet weather around him. Doors opened faster. Calls were answered sooner. Mistakes were handled carefully. His daughter Laurel managed the family foundation, with the discipline of someone who believed generosity should always be photographed from the correct angle. That evening, the hospital was already strained before the first alarm sounded. A storm had knocked out power on the south side of town. A shuttle van from a retirement center had slid off a service road. The emergency department was packed with wet coats shaking hands, and families speaking over one another. Maren was assigned to medical intake, but she kept checking her phone because Jonah had a debate event at school and had texted earlier that his stomach hurt. At 9:42, he sent, "I'm fine. Don't leave work." Maren read it twice. That was Jonah, careful even in need, too proud to ask, too trained by her exhaustion to make himself smaller. She typed, "Are you sure?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. His answer came back, "Yes." At 11:16, an orderly found a blue wristband near the East Service corridor. It was the kind used for family visitors after regular hours. Maren noticed it because the plastic was twisted, as if pulled off in a hurry. A name had been printed on it in black, J. Vale. Her first thought was that it had to be a mistake. Jonah was supposed to be at home by then. Before she could pick it up, the overhead speakers cracked. Rapid response. Room 4, Calder Suite. Rapid response, Room 4. The hallway changed instantly. A Calder Suite alert did not sound like other alerts, even when the words were the same. People moved faster. A supervisor appeared from nowhere. Celia Voss, the hospital administrator, came around the corner in a charcoal blazer, her heels clicking against the floor. "Maren," Celia said, "you're with me." "I need 1 second," Maren said, looking at the wristband. Celia followed her gaze. For a fraction of a moment, something tight passed over her face. "Not now," Celia said. "That has my son's name on it. There are 2 Vales in the system tonight. We'll check." "There aren't 2 Vales." The second page came louder. Rapid response, Room 4. Immediate clinical support. A young nurse named Tessa Briggs appeared near the medication station, face pale, holding a tablet too close to her chest. Maren looked at her. Tessa, is Jonah here? Tessa's mouth opened. Celia answered first. We are in an active emergency. Maren did what nurses are trained to do when a life is in front of them. She moved. Room 4 was not really a room. It was a private suite with walnut paneling, dimmable lamps, and a view of the chapel garden. Everett Calder lay in bed with his face gray and his breathing shallow. His monitor screamed with irregular numbers. Laurel stood against the wall, no longer elegant, no longer composed. Maren entered, and the world narrowed. For the next 12 minutes, she did not think of money or reputation. She thought of oxygen, pulse, airway, pressure, rhythm. She thought in clipped commands and muscle memory. She thought with her hands. Everett's watch slipped loose as they moved him, the gold band catching on the sheet. Maren noticed the time because the second hand trembled and stopped at 2:17 after striking the metal rail. When Everett stabilized enough for transfer, the room exhaled. Laurel touched Maren's arm with fingers as cold as the window glass. You saved him, she said. Maren pulled away gently. My son, she said. Celia stood in the doorway. We're checking. Maren ran. The east corridor fire door would not open with her badge. She swiped once, red light twice, red light 3 times. Red light. From the other side came a sound she would later hear in dreams. A dull thud, then a voice, far away and hoarse. Mom? Maren slammed her palm against the door. Jonah. A maintenance worker opened it from the other side 2 minutes later. 2 minutes can be nothing in a life. 2 minutes can be the shape of a wound. Jonah was on the floor near a row of stored chairs, curled partly on his side, trying not to cry in front of strangers. He had come to the hospital after the debate event because the stomach pain had worsened. He had been directed through the east entrance when the emergency department overflowed. During the storm confusion, he had been sent down the wrong corridor with a visitor wristband. Then trapped when the fire doors automatically locked during a security reset. He was not dying. That became the sentence everyone used against Maren later. He was not dying. He needed urgent care, but not resuscitation. He needed evaluation, pain control, imaging, and a mother. By the time Maren reached him, he had already learned the lesson that would matter more than the diagnosis. When he called, she had not come. Maren rode beside him to imaging, her hand hovering over his blanket, afraid to touch him without permission. Jonah stared at the ceiling. Did you hear me? He asked. Yes, she said. When? She could not answer, because the answer was after. After Everett Calder's breathing steadied. After Laurel cried. After the gold watch stopped. After the applause had already begun forming somewhere in the future. The next morning, Celia Voss came to Maren before dawn, with coffee she had not asked for, and a warning disguised as kindness. The Calder family wants to publicly thank you, Celia said. This could be good for you. Maren looked up from the chair beside Jonah's bed. He was asleep, turned away from her. Good for me? For your career, for the hospital, for nursing staff visibility. My son thinks I chose a stranger over him. Celia's voice softened. You made the correct clinical decision. Maren closed her eyes. Correct was not the same as clean. Before Celia left, she placed a folder on the table. It contained a printed statement, a schedule for a press event, and a release form allowing the hospital to use Maren's name and image. At the bottom was a handwritten note from Laurel Calder. You gave my father more time. Let us give your sacrifice meaning. Maren stared at the word sacrifice. It had the shape of praise. It felt like a theft. By noon, Maren's face was on the hospital website. By evening, it was on local broadcasts. The photograph they used showed her standing beside Everett Calder's bed, one hand on the rail, her face tired and solemn. No one could see Jonah beyond the locked east corridor, No one could see the blue wristband on the floor. No one could hear him, asking if she had heard him. The headline called her, "The Nurse Who Chose Duty." That was when Jonah stopped speaking to her. He did not shout. Shouting would have been easier. He simply withdrew into a silence, so complete it made their little house feel abandoned, even when he was in the next room. Maren cooked soup he did not eat. She left pain medication reminders on sticky notes he ignored. She stood outside his bedroom door and listened to the small, ordinary sounds of him being alive without her permission. At work, strangers congratulated her. In the grocery store, an elderly woman touched her sleeve and said, "Your son must be so proud." Maren smiled because the woman meant well, then went to her car and sat behind the steering wheel until her vision cleared. The hospital, meanwhile, moved quickly. The Calder Foundation announced a new duty above all, nursing scholarship in Maren's name. Laurel gave an interview from the chapel garden, saying that Maren represented the moral courage of healthcare workers everywhere. Celia sent an email to all staff calling the incident a powerful reminder of St. Anselm's values. Tessa Briggs did not reply to the email. Maren noticed because Tessa replied to everything. 3 days after the ceremony, Maren found Tessa crying in the linen room with a stack of folded blankets pressed against her chest. "I need to tell you something," Tessa whispered. Maren shut the door. Tessa looked toward the hallway, as if the walls had ears. "I was the one who saw Jonah come in through East Intake." Maren felt the room tilt. "You saw him?" "He said he had stomach pain. He asked if you were working. I was going to page you, but Mrs. Voss was there." Maren gripped the edge of the shelf. "What did Celia say?" Tessa swallowed. "She said not to pull you unless it became critical. She said the department was in surge status and family contact could wait." Family contact. That's what she called it. My son was locked behind a fire door. I didn't know he would be sent down that corridor. I swear I didn't. A volunteer told him to wait near East Imaging because the waiting room was full. Then the security reset happened. "Why didn't you tell me?" Tessa's face crumpled. "Because after it happened, they told us the official timeline. They said if anyone contradicted it, the hospital could lose emergency funding. They said the Calder donation was tied to the public response. I'm on probation, Maren. My mother is on my insurance." There it was. Not villainy with a knife, something quieter, more common, fear with paperwork. Maren did not comfort her immediately. She was too angry, and the anger needed somewhere to stand. "Who is they?" she asked. Tessa whispered, "Celia, and Laurel Calder's assistant." Maren went still. Laurel knew? I don't know. But her assistant was there before the press release. She asked for the cleanest version of the timeline. Cleanest. Maren thought of Jonah on the corridor floor. There had been nothing clean about it. That night she asked the hospital records clerk for the access logs from the East Corridor. The clerk, a tired man named Ellis Boone, had known Maren for 12 years and owed her nothing but respect. He looked at the request, then at her. "You don't want to ask for that officially," he said. "I do." "No," he said quietly. "You don't." Ellis opened a drawer and took out a small envelope. Inside was a printed strip of badge activity. Maren's badge had been denied 3 times at 2:19. The maintenance override opened the door at 2:21. But the security lockdown had started at 2:04, and Celia Voss's administrator badge had opened the same corridor at 2:06. Then again at 2:12. Maren read the numbers until they blurred. "She was there," she said. Ellis nodded once. "She says she was coordinating from Central Command. She opened the East Corridor. Twice. Why?" Ellis leaned back, looking suddenly older. "There's more." The alert for room 4 was escalated manually. Maren looked up. By whom? Ellis did not answer with words. He tapped the paper. See Voss. Maren carried the envelope home like it was too heavy for paper. Jonah was sitting at the kitchen table when she came in. His schoolbooks were open, but he was not reading. The blue visitor wristband lay beside his notebook. He must have taken it from the hospital. Maren placed the envelope on the counter. I found something, she said. Jonah did not look at it. I don't want your proof. It matters. No, he said, finally raising his eyes. It matters to you, because you want to be innocent. Maren flinched. Jonah's face was pale with controlled anger. Even if someone told you to go there, you still went. Even if they locked the door, you were still on the other side of it. Even if that man was sicker, I was still your son. Maren had no defense against that. He stood, picked up the wristband, and pushed it into his pocket. The whole town thinks you chose duty, he said. I think you chose the place that always gets the best of you. After he went upstairs, Maren sat alone in the kitchen beneath the yellow light Daniel had installed years ago. The envelope lay unopened beside her. For the first time, she wondered whether proving the hospital had trapped her would still not be enough, because Jonah was not only angry about one night. He was grieving every night that had come before it. The next morning, the trap tightened. Celia called Maren into a staff meeting she had not been told was about her. Laurel Calder was there. So were two board members, the legal director, and Tessa Briggs, who sat at the far end of the table with red eyes. Celia spoke gently, which made it worse. Maren, there is concern that you've been requesting internal records and pressuring junior staff. Maren looked at Tessa. Tessa looked down. Laurel folded her hands. We are grateful for what you did for my father, truly, but grief can distort memory. Your son's experience was unfortunate. Turning that pain into accusations could hurt many people. My son was trapped behind a locked door, and my father was dying, Laurel said. The room went quiet. Laurel's voice trembled, but not falsely. Do you understand what it is like to watch a parent disappear in front of you? To know one delay could take him. You saved him. Please don't turn that into something ugly. Maren stared at her. For the first time, she saw that Laurel was not pretending to love her father. She did love him. That was what made her dangerous. She was not protecting money alone. She was protecting the version of the night where her father's life had not been purchased with someone else's suffering. Celia slid a document across the table. It was a statement for Maren to sign. It said the hospital response had followed proper procedure. It said no administrative pressure influenced clinical care. It said any delay in reaching her son resulted from storm-related confusion. At the bottom was a line for her signature. Maren read it once. Then she pushed it back. No. Celia's jaw tightened. Laurel's expression hardened into disappointment. The legal director cleared his throat. Refusal may complicate your employment status. Maren stood. I have spent 19 years being useful to this hospital, she said. Do not mistake that for being owned by it. She walked out before her knees could fail. By evening, an anonymous staff complaint appeared in her file. By the next morning, she was placed on administrative leave, pending review. By noon, a reporter called, asking whether it was true. She had neglected her own son during a medical emergency and was now blaming the hospital to protect her reputation. The story turned. Hero became hypocrite. Duty became ambition. Sacrifice became performance. Jonah saw the headline on his phone. For the first time in days, he spoke to her without being spoken to first. Is that what this is now? He asked. You and the hospital fighting over who gets to look clean? Maren wanted to say no. But the terrible thing was that part of him was right. Everyone was fighting over the story. No one had asked what the night had done to the boy behind the door. The first crack came from the chapel garden. Maren was sitting there because she had nowhere else to go. Administrative leave had made her home feel like a courtroom and the hospital feel like a place where every wall knew her name. The chapel garden sat between the old wing and the donor suites. A small square of benches, winter shrubs, and a stone fountain that rarely worked. An old janitor named Mr. Abel came out pushing a gray trash bin. He had worked at St. Anselm longer than most administrators lasted. He moved slowly, not because he was weak, but because he refused to hurry for people who only noticed him when something spilled. He stopped beside Maren. "You Daniel's wife," he said. Maren looked up. "Yes, good man, fixed my porch step once. Wouldn't take $20. Her throat tightened. "That sounds like him, mister." Abel nodded toward the hospital windows. "Your boy got his shoulders." Maren looked down. "Mister." Abel reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded visitor map. "I don't like paper that lies," he said. Inside the map was a small plastic item, a hospital phone tag, the kind clipped to temporary internal devices used during surge events. Maren recognized the number printed on it, East Intake Phone 3. "I found that in the trash outside Conference Room B," Mr. Abel said. "Same morning they had all those important people walking around." Maren turned it over. A sticker on the back read, "Outgoing calls disabled. Service error." Her hand went cold. Jonah had said he tried calling. The hospital had said storm outages disrupted lines. But this device had been marked before the press event, removed from East Intake, and thrown away near the administrative conference room. "Why give this to me?" Maren asked. Mr. Abel looked toward the Calder suite windows. "Because that night I saw Mrs. Voss take a boy by the elbow and point him down East Hall. I heard him ask for his mother. I heard her say, 'Not yet.' The garden seemed to lose sound. 'Not yet.' 2 words, not cruelty, not shouting, not a dramatic command. Just a postponement that became a wound." Maren whispered. "Will you say that again to someone else?" Mr. Abel sighed. "I'm old, not brave." Then he looked at her. "But maybe I'm tired enough to pass for brave." The second proof came from Laurel by accident. Maren went to the hospital the next day, not as a nurse, but as a mother carrying a folder. She was stopped at the front desk because her badge had been deactivated. She waited near the lobby while security called upstairs. Across the lobby, Laurel Calder stood near the donor wall speaking to Celia in low voices. Everett was not with her. Without cameras, Laurel looked exhausted. Her polished grief had cracked around the edges. Maren did not intend to listen. Then Laurel said, "You promised the timeline was contained." Celia answered too softly for Maren to hear. Laurel's voice sharpened. "My father cannot know Jonah was delayed because of us. Because of us." Maren stepped forward. Laurel saw her and stopped. Celia turned. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Maren said, "Because of you." Laurel's face drained. Celia recovered first. "This is inappropriate." "No," Maren said. "This is the first honest sentence I've heard." Laurel looked at Celia, then at Maren, trapped between fear and shame. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way," Laurel said. Celia snapped, "Laurel." But the name came too late. Denial followed, as it always does when truth first enters a room. Laurel insisted she had not ordered anyone to ignore Jonah. Celia insisted no donor pressure affected care. The legal director insisted all concerns should move through proper channels. Proper channels, Maren had learned, were often hallways built to tire out the wounded before they reached a door. Then the second proof arrived from Tessa. She came to Maren's house after dark, soaked from rain, holding a paper grocery bag like it contained something alive. Jonah was upstairs. Maren almost did not let Tessa in. Anger still stood between them. Tessa placed the bag on the kitchen table. I copied the draft press packet, she said. Inside were printed pages from the Calder Foundation's media team. Not the final version, the draft. The first page contained 3 possible headlines, prepared before Everett Calder had fully stabilized. One read, Calder legacy continues after heroic hospital response. Another read, St. Anselm nurse chooses duty over personal fear. The third stopped Maren's breath. Mother nurse saves donor while son waits nearby, a story of sacrifice. Maren sat down slowly. They knew Jonah was nearby, she said. Tessa nodded. Before the public statement. Before they claimed they didn't know. Maren turned the page. There were notes in the margin. Avoid liability language. Emphasize clinical priority. Do not mention corridor lock. Do not identify minor without consent. And beneath that, in Laurel's handwriting, make sure Nurse Vale agrees before father sees this. Maren stared at those words. Laurel had not simply been protecting her father from guilt. She had been protecting him from the truth that his salvation had become a campaign before Jonah's pain had even been named. The emotional confirmation came from the person Maren least expected. Everett Calder himself. He called her house 2 days later. Maren almost did not answer. When she did, his voice sounded weaker than it had on stage. Nurse Vale, he said, my daughter tells me I owe you my life. Maren closed her eyes. You don't owe me anything. I'm told you are upset with the hospital. That is a small word for it. A long silence passed. Then Everett said, was there a boy? Maren could not speak. My daughter cries when I ask about the night, he said. Celia changes the subject. And yesterday I found a note in my discharge folder that said your son's name. Maren gripped the phone. Yes, she said. There was a boy. Yours? Yes. Was he harmed because of me? Maren looked toward the stairs. He was harmed because people decided your life needed a cleaner story than his pain. Everett breathed shakily. I want to see him. No. The answer came fast, fierce, maternal. Everett accepted it. Then I want to see the records. They won't give them to you. His voice changed. Not louder. Older. Harder. They will give me anything I ask for. That seems to be the problem. The final irreversible truth came not from the hospital, not from the Calder family, and not from Maren's folder. It came from Jonah. Maren found the message on his old phone after he threw it into the laundry basket by mistake. The screen was cracked. The battery was nearly dead. When she plugged it in, a notification appeared from the night of the storm. Unsent voice message. She did not play it at first. It felt like opening a diary. Then Jonah came into the kitchen and saw the phone in her hand. For a moment he looked frightened in a way she had not seen since he was small. Don't, he said. Maren set it down. I won't. But Jonah did not pick it up. He stood there, caught between wanting the truth buried and wanting someone to finally know the size of it. Then he pressed play himself. His voice filled the kitchen, thin and breathless under the noise of the hospital corridor. Mom, I'm sorry. I came here because it got worse, but I told them not to call you at first because you were working and I didn't want you to be mad. I know you get tired. I know everybody needs you. I just thought if I waited, maybe it would stop. But the door won't open now. I'm trying not to be scared. If you get this, can you come? Please don't be mad that I came. The message ended with a small sound Maren could not bear. Not crying exactly. Trying not to cry. Jonah reached for the phone, but his hand shook. Maren understood then that the hidden truth was not only what the hospital had done, it was what her life had taught her son to do. He had learned to delay his own need. He had learned to apologize for becoming an emergency. He had learned to be quiet until quiet became danger. Maren covered her mouth, but the grief came through anyway. Jonah looked at the floor. "I didn't want to be another thing you had to fix," he said. Maren moved toward him. This time, he did not move away. She did not hug him quickly. She did not claim forgiveness before it was given. She simply lowered herself to the kitchen floor, in front of him, the way she had when he was little and had fallen from his bike. "I am your mother before I am useful to anyone," she said. Jonah's face twisted. "You weren't that night." "No," she said, "and I will spend the rest of my life wishing I had broken every door in that hospital sooner." He sank down onto the floor. When he finally leaned into her, it was not reconciliation. Not yet. It was exhaustion finding the only place it still wanted to rest. The next day, Everett Calder asked for a private meeting with the hospital board. He arrived without Laurel beside him. He brought Maren, Jonah, Mr. Abel, Tessa, Ellis Boone, and the folder of records the hospital had hoped would remain scattered in frightened hands. Celia Voss looked smaller at the head of the conference table than she ever had in the hallway. Laurel sat beside her father, pale and rigid. The meeting began with legal language. It ended with Everett removing his gold watch and placing it on the table. The second hand still did not move. "My watch stopped at 2:17, he said. "For days I thought that was the minute I nearly died. Now I understand it was the minute this hospital decided whose pain would be allowed into the story." No one spoke. Everett turned to Maren. "You saved my life. I cannot return what that cost your son, but I can refuse to let my name purchase silence." Laurel began to cry then, but quietly, as if crying loudly would be another form of taking space. "I was scared," she said. "He was all I had left." Jonah looked at her for the first time. Laurel turned toward him. "I knew you were nearby before the press event," she said. "I told myself you were okay because I needed that to be true. I let them use your mother's pain because it made my father's survival feel noble. I am sorry." Jonah did not answer. His silence was not cruelty. It was ownership. For once, no one forced him to make someone else feel better. The public reckoning did not come in one dramatic explosion. It came in corrections. That was how institutions tried to make shame sound smaller. St. Anselm Medical Center released a statement acknowledging serious failures in internal communication, emergency access control, and administrative judgment during surge conditions. Celia Voss resigned before the board could vote on her removal. The Calder Foundation withdrew the Duty Above All campaign and redirected the funds into an independent patient family advocacy office named not after Maren, not after Everett, but after no one at all. Maren insisted on that. "No names," she said. "Names turn pain into property." Tessa kept her job after Everett personally requested whistleblower protections for all staff involved. Ellis Boone retired 3 months later with a party in the break room and a cake that leaned to one side. Mr. Abel refused every interview and accepted only a new mop cart, which he called About Time. Laurel Calder disappeared from public events for a while. When she returned, she no longer gave speeches about sacrifice. She funded transportation vouchers, family waiting room upgrades, and a policy requiring direct family notification during surge events. Some people called it image repair. Maybe part of it was. Human beings rarely become pure after one mistake, but she kept showing up when cameras were not there. And that mattered more than the first apology. Everett Calder lived another year. Not a miraculous year, a difficult one. A year of doctor visits, weakness, regret, and letters written in careful handwriting. He sent one letter to Jonah every month. Jonah answered none of them for a long time. Then, in the spring, he sent one sentence back. "I don't hate you." Everett kept that note in the drawer beside his bed until the day he died. As for Maren, she did not return to St. Anselm. For 19 years she had believed endurance was the same as purpose. She had mistaken being needed for being whole. After the investigation ended, another hospital offered her a senior nursing position, with better pay and fewer nights. She surprised herself by saying no, not forever, just for now. She took work at a community clinic 3 days a week. The pay was smaller. The rooms were plainer. No donor suites, no marble lobby, no banners calling anyone a hero. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, she was home when Jonah came back from school. At first, neither of them knew what to do with that. They moved around each other, like people learning the layout of a changed house. Maren overcorrected, asking too many questions. Jonah answered with teenage economy. Some evenings were awkward, some were quiet, some hurt. Healing did not arrive like applause. It arrived like a chair pulled out at the kitchen table, like Jonah leaving his door open an inch, like Maren turning off her phone during dinner and letting it ring, like the first time Jonah said, "There's a thing at school next Friday," and did not immediately add, "You don't have to come." She came. She sat in the back row of the auditorium, wearing a blue sweater instead of scrubs. Jonah saw her before he stepped up to speak. His face did not change much, but his shoulders lowered. That was enough. Months later, on the anniversary of the storm, Maren found the blue wristband in a small wooden box on Jonah's dresser. It was not displayed like a trophy. It was not hidden like shame. It was simply there beside Daniel's old pocket knife and a photo from a beach trip when Jonah was 7. She did not touch it. That evening, Jonah came into the kitchen while she was washing dishes. "I'm applying for the Patient Advocate Volunteer Program," he said. Maren turned off the faucet. "At the hospital. At the new office." She nodded slowly. "That's good." He leaned against the counter, older than he had been a year ago in ways she both mourned and admired. "I don't want people getting lost in hallways," he said. Maren dried her hands. "No," she said, "they shouldn't." He looked at her then. Not fully healed, not untouched, not the boy from before, but present. "Do you still think about him?" Jonah asked. "Mr. Calder?" Jonah nodded. "Yes," Maren said. "I think about all of them. And me." Maren's eyes filled, but she smiled through it. "First," she said. "I think about you first now." Jonah looked down, fighting the tenderness like it embarrassed him. Then he reached into his pocket and placed something on the counter. Everett Calder's gold watch. After Everett died, Laurel had sent it to Jonah, with a note saying only that her father wanted him to decide what should happen to it. Jonah had left it in the box for weeks. The second hand was still frozen at 2:17. "I don't want to keep it," Jonah said. Maren nodded. "What do you want to do?" They drove to the clinic together the next morning. In the waiting room, there was a plain wall near the intake desk, where patients often stood uncertainly, with forms in their hands. Maren had asked permission to place a small shelf there. No plaque, no donor name, no dramatic dedication. Jonah set the watch on the shelf beneath a simple framed sentence. "No one waits alone." For a moment, mother and son stood side by side in the quiet clinic lobby. The watch no longer measured time. It marked a promise. Not that every choice would be easy. Not that love would never fail. Only that when someone called from the other side of a locked door, the answer would never again be silence. Some stories are not about a person choosing right or wrong. They are about how cruelly life can arrange two desperate needs in the same moment. Then let everyone else judge from a safe distance. Maren was a nurse, but she was also a mother. Jonah was not selfish for needing her. Everett was not evil for wanting to live. Laurel was not a monster for being afraid to lose her father. And still, harm was done because powerful people tried to make a painful truth look clean. That may be the lesson worth carrying from this story. When institutions protect their image before they protect the vulnerable, ordinary people pay the emotional price. And when someone we love fails us, the truth may explain the wound, but it does not erase the need to heal it. What would you have done if you were standing in Maren's place that night? Save the patient in front of you, or break every rule to reach your child. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe to The Last Truth Stories for more emotional, fictional stories about hidden choices, family wounds, and the truths that finally come into the light.